Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a hot new crankbait that everyone is talking about right now. I've seen it in countless YouTube videos, promotional ads, numerous different tournaments, people catching fish on this, MLF, Bass Elite, all kinds of stuff. This is going to be a crankbait that you're going to want to try this year, and we're going to talk a little bit about it in today's video, so stay tuned and let's get right into it. So what is this crankbait that we're going to be talking about today? I'm going to first start off by saying this is actually not a new crankbait. This has been on the market for a while. This is actually a remake of a very old crankbait, and it is something that's been around for a very, very long time. But all of a sudden this year, the Harris Chain events, St. John's River, some other tournaments that I've seen over in Texas, this crankbait has been making an appearance, and that is this L-shaped crankbait with the lip on the end here. This specific one I'm going to be talking about today is the 6th Sense Swank. It comes in a 66 and a 77 size. I will link them down below if you want to check these out. You're going to want to get your hands on some of these. They're very awesome crankbaits, and they're going to be very versatile for what you want to do. And if you use my code that I'll have down in the description, you will also save 10% off your whole order. So if you want to check that out, go ahead down below. But what is so special about this crankbait? Like I said, it's a remake of a very old crankbait. Strike King has their own version. 6th Sense has their version. There might be a couple others out there on the market now, but it has this L-shaped bill, and it's not like anything I've ever seen before. I fish a lot of square bill crankbaits. I fish a lot of round bill, deep diving crankbaits, mid diving crankbaits, but what is this L bill going to do? It honestly looks like it should only dive 6 inches under the water or not even work correctly at all. It doesn't look like it's going to go very deep to begin with. But this crankbait actually gets down like 3 to 5 foot, and what it's going to do is work in the same places you'd throw a lipless crankbait, same places you'd throw a swim jig or a chatterbait, but it will also work on rocks and wood. It just might not be as effective in those places as it will be in the grass, and that is why I've seen it coming to popularity on the Harris Chain this year. People fishing hydrilla. Over in Texas, people fishing hydrilla. I think this will also work up here in the Northeast fishing milfoil. You'll notice one of the first things with this crankbait is it's very loud. Compared to a regular square bill or even a silent crankbait or even a lipless crankbait, that's a very loud bait. It makes a lot of noise. It has a couple little BBs in it, and then it has one very large hard knocking ball bearing in there. This thing's going to draw fish in from a distance. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the bait selection, what makes this bait so effective, the gear that I'm going to be using this on, and then ultimately how to fish this thing to catch a bunch of fish this year. So the first thing with bait selection, I kept this very simple just to get started and learn how this bait performs. So when I'm learning a new technique, I try not to go crazy. I don't go buy 100 different colors or anything like that. I try to learn what the bait can do and how it can perform without going too much into color selection, size, everything like that. We have a lot of smaller fish here in the Northeast, so I went with the smaller size. This is the 66. The 77 would work if you have some bigger fish in your bodies of water, or I might start playing around with the 77 if I like the 66 after I use it a little bit. When it comes down to color selection, I kept it really simple. I got a red one here. This is called boiled crawfish. Bright red. I use, like I said, same places I'm going to throw a lipless. I use a red lipless all the time. So I had to get a bright red one, especially in dirty water or something like that. And then I just got a shad color here. This one is called 4K shad, and it looks super realistic. It has a bunch of different hues of color to make it look like a shad, but just a plain shad color is what I'm looking for when those fish are feeding on shad in some of these weed beds. I also would have grabbed a bluegill color, but they were sold out at the time. But that'll be one that I'll be adding to this, especially if I'm fishing it in places where I fish a chatterbait. Oftentimes they're feeding on bluegills or perch in those types of areas, so a bluegill colored one would be awesome as well. Now when it comes to gear, there's 2 ways you can do this. If you're going to get the bigger size, I would go with just a 7-foot medium heavy rod. Same thing you'd throw a spinnerbait on or anything like that, or even my chatterbait rod that I talk about all the time, the 7'3" heavy or 7'3" medium heavy feeling reel from Kistler. That would be the one that I would recommend. But for me, I went with the smaller size, and I'm just going to throw this on my square bill rod. So this is a 6'9" light medium heavy Kistler helium, and I have it with a Kistler Series 1 spinning reel right here. Then I just have straight 12-pound fluorocarbon. I think that's going to be what I play around with the most. I might go up to 15 or even 17 to get this thing to ride where I want it to in the water, especially fishing through some of these weed beds. But we're going to start with 12. I think that's going to be the sweet spot. 15 might be the way to go, but we'll see which one works best for me. I just need the durability for it to being able to rip it through the grass, which we will talk about later in how to fish it. This isn't a bait that you rip through the grass like you would like a lipless crankbait. So when I throw a lipless crankbait, I'm throwing 15 or 17 pound test and a stiffer rod because I'm hammering it through that grass to try and break all that free, and I need the durability of stronger line to do so. I don't think that's going to play with this bait, so I think I could get away with 12-pound test to also allow me to fish this up shallow around lily pads and lily pad stems, fishing it through wood that's up there on the bank or even some rocks. I think those are going to be great places to fish this bait as well, and it'll just allow me to cover a lot of water fishing with one bait. So before we get into how to fish this bait, what makes this bait unique? The weird thing about this bait is that it has that L-shaped bill like we already talked about. But what that does is it allows the bait to get down, and then when it gets down to depth, it will ride horizontal in the water and have more of a side-to-side wobble than a square bill does when it goes nose down and wiggles back and forth like this, or any other type of crankbait. So when you fish in grass, that grass is in the water like this. If you fish a square bill, it'll come down and it'll bog down in the grass and keep wanting to go down further. This bait will come down, it will hit the grass, and if you get stuck, you can stop it and it will be able to float up out of the grass and keep going again because this is a very buoyant bait. Or you can get it through the grass and it will wiggle its way through because of the way that this bait rides in the water and its side-to-side movement. On top of that, you're going to have that very loud bait draw fish in from a distance. I think it's just going to be a very excellent bait to fish in different types of cover, but most importantly, grass. This is going to be the place that I'm going to throw it the most. It's something different that not a lot of people are throwing right now. With as much notoriety as it got in these past couple tournaments, I imagine that will change relatively quick, and a lot of people will jump on and start throwing this bait as well, anywhere there's grass. But I think this is going to be super effective when everyone out there is throwing that chatterbait or lipless on the grass flats. You can go right behind guys throwing this because it does a completely different thing in the same environment, very effective, and it will catch you a lot of fish right behind guys using other baits that the fish see all the time. So how am I going to fish this bait to make sure I catch the most amount of fish while I'm fishing in this grass? The number one thing I'm going to do with this bait, and the one thing that I've heard about while fishing with this bait, is you don't rip it through the grass like you do a lipless crankbait. What you want to do is you want to cast this out there, you're going to reel it down slowly, and just do a slow, steady retrieve like you would with a chatterbait. While you're doing that, when it makes contact with the grass, you want to keep reeling and it will deflect through the grass, hopefully. If it does not work its way through the grass and it does get stuck, you can worm it through with your rod, almost like you're fishing a soft plastic worm. You will literally drag it with your rod and pull it through the grass and then keep winding. If you don't have success doing that, the other thing you can do is kill your reel and it will float back up out of the grass because, like I said, it's a very buoyant bait. It'll float back up and you can continue to retrieve to get it out of the grass. It'll almost back its way out of the snag that it's in and then keep going. And if all of that doesn't work to get it through the grass, you want to either A, go up in line size to keep it above where you're fishing it. It's not going to work on like topped out grass or anything like that, but if you're fishing it through submerged grass and you keep getting it buried down in there and cannot get it through, go to a bigger line size. You'll start to tick the tops of the grass rather than get it buried down in. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video talking about this new crankbait. I'm super excited to put this thing to the test, fish it through some places I usually have success with a chatterbait, and see if it works just as well. And if you, like I said, if you want to check any out, I'll have them linked down below. If you want to see some other crankbaits you should have during the pre-spawn, go ahead and check this video out right here. Hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more of my fishing videos coming up.